Hello, everybody. It's another Nen Show Podcast here with Craftsdwarf and my co-host Mathwiz. Say hello, Mathwiz.
Hello, Mathwiz.
I'm so glad you have been putting up with me for so long. Anyway,
I'd say the same for you about me. Like so often I'm like late on the readings or something. Stuff happens.
Stuff. It all happens so much all the time. Anyway, we have finished Trigun Maximum. We're all done with Trigun. And regarding the patron poll, I think I set the date wrong. So it's as of the release of this episode, the poll will be finishing. As of the recording of this episode, it still has several days left, so we don't actually know what's gonna win. So yeah, that's you'll find out next time with Boruto as to how what series wins that we're doing next. Because it looks like we won't be reading Dragon Ball Super quite yet because it's still I'm still figuring out when this current arc will truly be over, or if the next arc started, and I don't know it yet. It's not a priority anyway, so we're gonna wait on Dragon Ball Super, it looks like, and just read Boruto next time. Which will be finishing the original run of Boruto. It's chapters 56 to 81, and then we'll also be reading the Mirai 2-volume manga adapting the novel, and the Minato one-shot that was relatively recent, and the Sasuke story that was also adapting a novel, I believe, with the dinosaurs.
Let's go, more Boruto. The Boruto Defense Squad is back.
Let's fucking go. Yes, so that should be fun and good. And we're doing that next time. But anyway, before we get into that, we finished Trigun. Preliminary thoughts on I'd say finally finishing Trigun, but I imagine the original anime had a plenty conclusive ending. So it's not. I don't imagine it's a case where you felt like with hypothetically, like maybe like with Baby Steps or something, where it's like I don't know how that ends, but I don't know if it's feel like obviously the manga continues on for way longer, so I've run into that with cases like Chihaya, where it's like if I never read the manga, I'd just be done with this very obviously incomplete story. So I don't know, how did you feel about Trigun in that way?
Are you talking about like anime to manga, or?
Yeah, well, I'm like, how do you feel quote unquote finishing Trigun? Like, did you feel like lacking from the anime, or was it just like the anime was already complete enough and the manga was just like, I don't know. I'm just wondering, or just in general thoughts on on the manga itself too. Like,
I feel like typically I feel like if I don't like something or don't like it as much as I expect to, normally I lean on the side of there's probably something that didn't click with me, rather than like, oh, I didn't like this. This was a bad take on the story. Because I feel like with regards to Trigun Maximum, it definitely goes in an interesting direction, I'd say, and it does a number of things very differently to what the anime does. And I think it's like there are pros and cons to that for me. I feel like overall the ending of the manga, at least at this point, like hasn't really hit for me in the same way that the anime. Just the way it all comes together, I guess. Mm-hmm. But again, I feel like in this case, if someone in the comments like wants to give their thoughts on like if they prefer the manga version, I'd be interested in hearing that. Because like for me, the length of the manga is definitely more than the material the anime has, and I guess at this point I'm like kind of split on how much the extra material was worth it for me personally. Like I feel like I didn't resonate with it as much on a moment to moment basis.
Okay. And I did see your tweet about, I guess, how Wolfwood's character ends up in the anime versus how it happened in the manga. You were like, oh yeah, that's pretty different. So,
yeah, it's like I've been kind of waiting to get to the end of Maximum to really give thoughts on like my opinions on characters in the manga compared to how they're handled in the anime. And I think, like, Wolfwood I'm kind of split on. I like how Legato is handled in the anime more, personally, but, like,
Okay.
when it comes to, like, Knives and Vash, well, like, with Knives in particular, he definitely gets way more of a role in the story than in the anime. And Vash, I feel like, is still pretty Vash. Like, I feel like I don't have a stronger opinion either way. But yeah, I don't know. It might be easier to explain, like, going through the chapters and stuff.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because there was some stuff I liked from this reading, but overall, I would definitely say it didn't like click with me, majorly. It definitely because we also read Shaman King, and I was, I did walk away from Shaman King, liking it more, than I like Trigun so far. But overall, I've definitely felt just kind of like, with these last two readings, just like, oh yeah. Wish I liked these series more than I did, unfortunately. So
yeah, I guess it's like there's
90s
also
just ain't it, apparently. I don't know. No.
Like, my knowledge of the anime is definitely like years removed from when I last watched it, because it's been many years. But like, from just what I was feeling with it, because I remember going through the original run of the manga, and it was reminding me a lot of, like, what I was what about Trigun I was, like, nostalgic for, and the initial appeal of it to me in the first place. And then I feel like Maximum, to me, from what I remember of the original Trigun, leans, like, way more heavily into, like, the sci-fi,
way more.
Yeah, and I don't know if that aspect of it, like, I can't say, like, it's definitely not a bad direction to go in, because, like, what that accomplishes thematically is definitely interesting, but, yeah, I don't know, just something about it didn't quite hit for me.
Yeah, we will talk about it and see how we feel, because, like, there was some stuff that I liked from the reading, but again, like I said, overall, it just didn't, I wish it worked for me, but it didn't, so, but anyway, start off with Meryl and Billy sort of going over the Knives' destruction and how just fucked everything is.
You know what, actually, I think the way I could maybe sum up my, like, general opinions on Trigun, the anime, versus Maximum, is I think, like, whenever Maximum is focusing on, like, the core conflict between, like, Vash and Knives, or, I'd still say I was interested in the stuff with Wolfwood, but I don't think the new characters in Maximum hit as much. Like, I don't think I was as interested in their conflicts, but I'm...
Like Livio, I assume?
Yeah, but I'm just gonna chalk that up to I probably didn't, like, something just didn't click with me.
Okay.
Like, like that fight in, like, when, in sort of the final stretch of this, heading into the final battle, where there's, like, a few chapters dedicated to, like, Livio and Raslo fighting, the Crimson Nail.
Yes.
And I was just sort of like, I wish I cared about these characters more.
Yeah, no, I was, that makes sense. But yeah, I was gonna say one of the first things that struck me about the reading is I like the panel where, because there's they're trying to shoot missiles at Knives' arc, and I just like the panel with his face, and it's like fractured into, and you see like different scenes of like ships in space,
yeah,
and plants, and just sort of like, just a really striking page, and I thought it was really cool. Way to visualize like what's going through his head, and just like, the memories and the events happening right now, and
there's definitely some really interesting, like, art and, like, page structure, I think, in this final stretch. Like, that's a really good example. I mean, I'll point more out as we get to them.
Yeah,
it's like I'm kind of torn on the art, because I feel like I think part of it is just a limitation for manga. Like, I had a hard time following the action.
Well, see, also, so my thoughts on that is because aside from what I said last time with, like, maybe I'm just not as used to gun action, but sometimes if I get confused, if I, like, stop reading as quickly and I back up and actually, like, look panel to panel, I go, oh, like, that happens with me sometimes in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where it's like, wait, what happened? And then I go back and actually look through it, it's like, oh, no, okay, this is, like, this character's doing this in this panel, and then that leads to this. Okay, like, once I actually stop and pay attention, it makes sense, but my problem here is, like, there was times I literally, like, I remember one from the last reading is when Meryl, when they were in the standoff and Meryl said, like, I was wondering if, like, maybe did she do it or did did Legato with his powers manipulate her into doing it, right? Like, what was there something specific that set her off? Like, was she scared? And I remember looking over and I couldn't answer that question, so I guess Meryl just did it, right? Like, you know, so, but there was definitely times where, like, if I get confused about something and I go back and try to understand it, I still just really can't, which is definitely just an instance of, like, yeah, probably the manga not clicking with me, maybe. And I will say this reading also did a couple weird things that just made me go, like, okay, that's a thing now. Worms?
Yeah.
What? I'm sorry. They just. Did I miss something, Mathwiz? Or am I just really stupid? Because just random, this out of nowhere, they're like, yeah, this character was actually, like, an emissary from the sandworms that are, you know, have their own opinions on the plant and human conflict, and it just happens, and then it's just over, and it doesn't. I was so fucking confused. I was like, did I miss something earlier? Why is it like this?
I mean, like, maybe there's something with, like, coexistence between species and, like, that maybe being, like, another angle on, like, the humans and the plants, but I was also
the natives to this, where they'd be the indigenous peoples in a sense.
Oh, okay.
In that conflict, but it feels just so, like, odd the way it's briefly brought up, and then it's just kind of is, and it's I don't know, it was just very odd to me the way it was introduced into the story, which is maybe kind of feeding into what you say about the sci-fi elements not being as interesting to you, because, like, I don't know, that just happened, and it was like, I didn't. Now it's like, okay, I get like the but we'll talk. Maybe I'll have more to say later. I just remember that being an example of, like, me just, like, reading the manga and just kind of having to put it down for a second, because it's like, what is going on? Like, so, you know, but you know, that, but I can see people still, like, enjoying that aspect, because it is just, like, you know, it's a small thing that adds a lot of, like, potential intrigue and mystery to the setting. Because it's not gone into very much, right? But you know, for me, it didn't work like that, because, I mean, admittedly, like, I think one of the first things I remember saying about Trigun is just like because I was talking about the Cynic Clinic video, and I was just like, yeah, it would be really cool to care about this world and setting, and, you know, which he argued that the anime does by having a lot of anime original content, and that didn't really change for me. So yeah, all right. But anyway, we get a little fight between Wolfwood and Legato. And then we get more
the
on
Eye of Michael.
What's it called? Yes, thank you. Where that was one of the things I like. Probably one of my two favorite parts about the reading was, like, all this context with Wolfwood and sort of his past and how that worked into you know, his fight against the Eye of Michael. Like, where, you know, he's struggling in the fight, and he's just thinking about, like, you know, wondering if he can be forgiven. And then Vash comes in to save him, and, you know, standing by his friend. And it's like, yeah, that's neat.
I do think that there's maybe, like, kind of an interesting parallel with, like, with the Eye of Michael, they have sort of, like, advanced their, like, growth and evolution to gain strength. And, like, they have these, I don't know what you'd call it. They have the things that can, like, they can take a lot of damage, but, like, come back. But it's like draining on their life force, but they can be seemingly invincible for a bit. And that feels kind of similar to, like, what the, like, Vash and knives like the plants can do, where it's like they can, like deal with all this pain or recover, but it's like eventually it like is whittling away at their life.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about how, because like before, Wolfwood was talking about like Vash's humanity or lack thereof, and it turns out that he himself has sort of stepped away from humanity as well. Like, obviously the way that they use their life, like, because he's aged up, like, or his metabolism is altered so that he's like grown a lot, and like he's basically a teenager.
So like
right?
Wolfwood is younger. Like younger, but had to age faster, whereas like Vash looks younger, but he's like 150 years old at minimum.
Yeah, no, I didn't think about that as an inverse, right? And of course, it still works as like he was forced to grow up in very quickly. It's very literal, and it's good. It works. Did you have anything more to say on that little, or I guess I'm still going through it, but I'm on chapter. I'm almost at the end of the volume, so.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't have a lot. I mean, I already talked about like the metabolism and stuff, which is probably the only thing I could think of.
Okay.
I guess I do kind of like the interaction where Vash is like, "Don't die, Wolfwood," and he's like, "I'm just trying to sleep."
Yeah, and I also thought it was interesting because they're talking about like wanting to be rescued by the ships from Earth, but then with knives being so dangerous, like the ships coming earlier than expected is actually like because they want to stop knives before Earth gets there. So normally the ships coming earlier would be a good thing, but in actuality it's like, fuck, we need to stop knives. So it's an interesting tension, I suppose. Obviously how we're it's could be it would be expected that what's the most interesting that could happen is Earth is involved with shit when everything goes down, and that's exactly how it happens. But it's still cool.
There is that one chapter with Wolfwood and like the girl who I guess was like someone from the orphanage from, at least I think that's because there was something with like the little bird thing he made or whatever.
Yes, no, it definitely seemed like she was someone who knew him as Nicholas in the, or because the little girl who and then obviously she didn't think that he was possibly Nico because he's too old even for someone who was older than her when she was a kid.
God.
And yeah, just the way that the conflict was neat, where it's just that sort of examination of like law, order, and chaos, where he's free, but with that freedom comes a lot of pain and suffering, and she's in a cage, but she is doing very well off for being in that cage. Like she's able to eat and be comfortable. Yeah.
I also thought that it was an interesting little interaction. I thought Wolfwood came off as like kind of an asshole because like she's in this situation where like, oh, I'm going to be forced to marry this person because like my family had this debt and now it came down to me and I can't afford to pay the loan shark and blah, blah, blah. And Wolfwood is just like, even with like the battle part that happens later where he's just like, it's your fault. It definitely seemed like self-destructive from him in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I had more specific thoughts. Oh yeah, that Wolfwood was just like, if you just stayed quiet and did what you were supposed to do, then like they wouldn't have been in this situation. But it's like, I don't know, I guess that feels kind of like maybe like a commentary on like Wolfwood being part of like the Eye of Michael, where it's like he's just sort of like prior to this he's just kind of working with them or something about the way he's lived his life. I'm not really sure if I'm going anywhere with this.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to see where I don't know. Because, I agree he's being very harsh, but obviously...
Yeah, because the other person also has a line, I'm tired of I'm tired of a life of nothing more than filling the holes of other people's lives. And Wolfwood said there's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I didn't quite get this one.
Well, I mean, with that exchange, I was definitely thinking of, like, people coming together and forming bonds is like, you could say that's filling holes in a sense, like the fact that like Wolfwood and Bash are friends, right? Like they're two people who aren't quite human fighting in this world of violence. Like even if they're not, they're very different in some ways. They're also two of the people who are the closest to each other, right? They're filling, and maybe it's not even a hole that they even thought had to be. God, okay, Fujoshi are gonna love the way I word this, but maybe they don't know about the holes each other fills in their lives. Fuck, I'm sorry, I brought up that imagery. For I don't know, it didn't. I don't know. But it's just and so of course in her case it's not a good bond, right? Like this guy was a piece of shit who was literally going to kill her because he thought that she wasn't pure, I think, but like fundamentally, like she's like maybe rejecting everything because she doesn't want to be in a cage at all. But like it's not like her way, the way of life she's been pushed into is horrible for everyone, right? Like that's I don't know. It's there's a I don't know. It's an interesting situation. Like I do like how the author will set up these kind of problems without easy answers. Like another one I thought of was from the last reading with you have the Vash protecting a guy from being killed, and who he was a fucking rapist, and he killed, but the guy who was going to kill him ultimately didn't want to because that kid was also a child, and his parent was going to be sad, like he was calling for his dad, and so just like I don't know, it's an interesting recurring thing. So it was a neat chapter. Anyway, then we get more Wolfwood, him connecting to, or at least reaching a hand out to, like I think we see it starts with a flashback with the young Wolfwood giving food to, I'm pretty sure it's Livio is the implication, and then he gives he reaches out to just another kid in a town crying. No, never mind. It just flashes back to that. My bad. I thought that was at the orphanage. I thought it was matching present and future, but no, I just
like the flashbacks in Trigun. This manga doesn't do the thing that a lot of the manga we've read do, where like the flashbacks, like the page turns black or something, or like gray. There's no real like indicator of when it flips.
No, we have it's just the character's ages, where it's like, oh right, no, that's right, that so which is it's clear to me when reading it, but while skimming through it to talk about it, like I just it's been a few days since I've read this, so it didn't immediately come to mind. But yeah, we get the little flashback where it's like, oh, is Livio killing these animals? Whereas we find out he has a whole other personality. But yeah, there's some fighting, and we get a little tease with the older guy. I forget what his name is, but I know at one point we're supposed to think he's Trip of Death, but I'm pretty sure Livio is Double Fang, and Raslo is Trip of Death, is how they say it later. So I forget what I'm supposed to call the old guy. But yeah, it's a pretty long fight, so I guess we could just talk about it generally. As I'm skimming through, did you have anything to say about Wolfwood versus Livio, and then the old guy as well, like factoring into that? Because I'm just gonna I'm gonna scroll through while you talk. If you have anything to say, but
I mean, I know that like the old guy has like a little line about like Wolfwood being too soft, and like I guess training him, but how like no, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm like reading him talking about the past or like this current fight, because he says like you're too soft, you won't survive, and then there's the next page where he says he's perfect. So
yeah, well, because I assume that like in the past he was too soft, and then like he sees him do some violence in the present, and he's like, oh, he's gotten over it, he's perfect. But as they fight, it turns out like no, Wolfwood has been affected by Bash a lot. I think like that's what I took.
Yeah, I mean like the that chapter with the girl before, where Wolfwood mentioned like there's nothing wrong with like filling the holes in other people's lives, and I don't I mean that ties into this in some form. I'm just not sure if I'm reading it in the correct way, because obviously, like, Wolfwood is, like, fighting back against the other Eye of Michael guys.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I just thought of just now is how, like, because part of the conflict of the whole of Trigun is, like, can humanity change, right? Like, are people, like, just fundamentally bad or not, right? Like, that's basically what Knives is talking about. And so how these Eye of Michael guys work into it is because, like, you have the old guy who's basically a father figure who raised them, and Wolfwood, as we see, he's taken quite a, fundamentally, I do think, like, he doesn't want to kill people. He just feels like he has to, and he was obviously very pushed hard to. That sentence didn't work out, but hopefully the meaning got across. And we saw it with his relationship with Vash, where it's like, he's trying to do the same thing to Vash that he had done to him, with, like, trying to push him to kill and be violent because it's easier that way. And it's, or there's problems that can be solved through killing. But with in contrast, you have Livio, who he isn't naturally a killer, to the point that in order to be what the old guy wanted of him, he had to he had a split personality, Raslo, who is the ideal, basically, right? So Wolfwood is also split, because he has the old guy telling him to kill people, and then he has Vash, but he ultimately chooses, like, Vash, right? Like, he, as we see throughout the fight, he's remembering Vash's words and thinking highly of Vash, about how, like, that person, never made excuses, right? Like, he held on to his ideals, and where the old guy is like, oh, there's, like, because even Wolfwood did that same thing with, like, excuses and justifications for why killing should be done, like, trying to not just, like, doing it, but, like, having a reason or a moral high ground to do it, where Vash he doesn't want to kill, and so he won't, right? Like, because it mattered to the people, like, his Rem, he cared about her, so he won't kill because of the people, the humanity she loved and she was a part of. So, yeah. And then Raslo grows a third arm, and it's back, and it's, there he is, the Trigun. We finally found it. I also really like, towards the end of the fight, when the lady at the orphanage recognizes him.
Wait, what about when the lady recognizes him?
Oh, I just thought it was cool and good, because, like, he obviously, like, he's way older than he should be, but she's still, I'm skipping ahead a little bit because I didn't have much to say about the stuff before that. So I'm actually in volume 10 right now, if you want to go ahead and see it, or see if there's anything you missed.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like the idea, even if it's, like, an orphanage, it's still, like, you'll recognize your kids, like, even if they grow up, it's like they're still family.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, and I like Vash coming in to protect what, because, like, obviously Wolfwood's putting everything on himself, but, he's not alone. And so, it's friendship.
Yeah. I guess there is also, like, the line about, like, how Vash had never forsaken anything, and he's kind of always true to himself, and maybe Wolfwood wasn't being true to himself in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, he was putting on the face of a devil because he thought and he was the fact that he was working with Legato as Chapel, even though he didn't really align with Knives' worldview at all, right? So yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess the kind of juxtaposition between the old guy who like with the Eye of Michael, where Wolfwood and Livio are, like, kind of his kids in a way, like, and then obviously there's, like, the people from the orphanage, so it's sort of like, I guess, the idea of family, and, like, I don't know, there's definitely something here, even if it's like I'm not fully getting the full picture.
I'm not sure.
Or, like, I don't know. Like, I'm kind of trying to piece together how, like, when, like you mentioned, Wolfwood getting recognized by the woman running the orphanage. And I guess, like, Wolfwood was always kind of worried that, like, oh, the kids shouldn't, no one should see me like this. Like, I've become an assassin, and, like, inhuman, but it's still like, you know, the people from the orphanage were still able to like accept him, whereas like when any sign of like humanity in the eye of Michael is like they try to beat that out of him. So like I don't know if there's like a juxtaposition there.
Mm-hmm. Man, this was quite the long fight. Actually, like I'm scrolling through it, it's like it's still
it's
going.
like minimum of volume. Oh, and I guess like having the full picture of like Livio and Razlo, it's like those two are kind of fighting separate from each other up until that last fight they get, whereas like in the battle with Wolfwood, like he witnesses like Vash and Wolfwood fighting as a team, so I don't know if there's like a, you know, the unity there versus kind of like the more isolated, like I don't know.
Well, I was gonna point out because like how the fight, you know, ends, quote unquote, is like the old guy tries to kill both Wolfwood and Razlo because like you know, ultimately like even Razlo, who's hypothetically perfect child, he was still ultimately willing to sacrifice as a pawn, and Razlo doesn't take that well because he literally gave everything for him. But he was, you know, but of course, like, yeah, where Vash and Wolfwood are working together. So, because yeah, and they're able to defeat him basically, but not like, kill him because they're able to just allow Livio to come back out, and then we get the fucking the ending scene where you know his they grab a drink. They chill. The orphans are, you know, they're welcome home. You know, everyone's grateful, and Wolfwood fucking dies, and I was like, oh fuck. And yeah, you got Livio sort of carrying on Wolfwood's will and sort of positioned next to Vash, where he joins them, and they force themselves to eat because they don't want to eat, but they need the energy because there's more fighting to come. And yeah, he literally like he doesn't, you know, he's just like joins because he's also a former member of Legato's group fighting against Knives and Legato now. So yeah, and the way, you know, the ending with his gun being a big cross for his grave is like fuck.
Yeah, I also thought it was interesting that like before he died, he told Vash to smile and that like he looks better when he smiles, when before he had said that Vash's smile always felt like hollow and fake. So I'm not really sure what significance to take from that.
Yeah, well, because I know that, like, you know, I guess him just accepting that, like, because Vash is his friend, so he ultimately wants him to smile, and that's how the series ends off on, is Vash is finally able to smile, right? Like an actual genuine smile. So suggesting he smile when at the moment he should be the saddest. You know, that's kind of I think we've touched on before with other, you know, One Piece that comes to mind first, of course, but I'm pretty sure it's not the only one. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there was also kind of something interesting in like the two characters just sort of scarfing down food after like Wolfwood died, almost like they're just like trying to eat this food as fast as possible to Is it like Cowboy Bebop that does something? Yeah, it's there's like a scene in Cowboy Bebop where they do something similar, where like one of the characters leaves the ship and then they're just like scarfing down, like,
that's right.
I don't remember what it was they were eating. Was it like eggs?
I want to say eggs because that's what I remember. But it's been a while since I saw the show, so yeah. But yeah, they talk a bit after the fact with about the current situation. You know, planning to, like, the city's trying to find a way to fight against the Ark, and they talk about the potential danger of the plants rebelling against humanity under Knives' command. Then we get a brief return to form, in a sense, where some gunmen attack, and after, like, you know, Millie and Meryl were literally just talking about, oh, it's like, man, I kind of liked back in the day when every day was a new adventure. And then we get a little callback to that with just random weird gunmen coming in, and Vash comes to save the day, and Meryl's fucking crying, and it's like, aw.
Yeah, like one last little goofy comedic uh ch- moment before the big fight.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, Knives' fucking arc and with all the fucking wings and shit. Um, like I don't know, there's some cool designs and imagery. Oh yeah, the fucking coins come up again, and that was another one of those weird moments. Is when they're like, "Oh man, we need one more coin," and then literally just a random ass character we've never seen before comes in and gives the coin, and it's just like, well, that just happened. uh,
Yeah, I didn't remember like if that was a character who had shown up before or just someone who I don't know. It did happen.
yeah, like it seemed like he was even being controlled, basically. Like I just because he had no idea what was going on. So
Oh,
and
right, it was
he goes,
setting
oh
up
yeah, no,
like
he had
the
like a fucking worm in
worms.
him, right? Yeah, right. I forgot. Yes, that's right. Yeah, the whole that it was weird. And then we also have there's a brief scene with one of the worms and fighting Legato. Then
I like all the artwork of Legato just making like insane, like hysterical expressions. Like he's just so excited to kill people.
yeah, he hates this world, so he's gonna fucking watch it burn and have fun doing it. But yeah, then we get the final fights: the Crimson Nail versus Livio. Um,
Yeah, also the people from Earth come in and like I think were
mm,
some of them humans and some of them plants. Like at least one of them was.
I assume. Oh yeah.
I
Oh wait,
thought
really?
because like she was observing the. Maybe I just didn't understand this sci-fi stuff at all.
Um, because I don't remember thinking one of them was plants, but one of them was a plant, but maybe. Are you talking about the lady
Yeah,
with drinking the tea? Because she or hmm.
unless it was just science stuff that was allowing her to observe what was happening.
Yeah, because I assume they just have like have high higher tech. It's been 150 years, and they and like she like the way they're talking doesn't seem like either of them are plants. So I didn't think of either of them as being plants. Especially though, as we saw with the REM ship, is that the plants were basically being discriminated against and retreating. They were just things that humans made and humans can do nature to exploit, basically. So having one of them just on the ship treated as an equal would be interesting, but I don't think that's what was
Hmm.
going on. So I guess one thing I came up with the hold on, what's it? Eliandra is that she has access to a nuke, so that if like even I guess the plan was that no matter what, humanity would end. By her plans. Like if Knives wasn't able to do it, then she would. But so Livio stopping her has
Mm-hmm.
a bit of weight there. But and of course with their fight, you also have Raslo and Livio. So like Raslo helping Livio out instead of just sort of hit that the two parts of himself both working in tandem instead of being at
Mm-hmm.
odds with each other was neat. Oh my god, a gender character we don't have to talk about for 20 minutes because I don't know, I think that's fine because it was just like because we similar with One Piece with Yamato where it's just like it's just a part
Yeah.
of that character and it's not a big deal and even more so it's an antagonistic character, but I don't feel it was ever supposed to be like, oh, this character. I compare it to Hitman Reborn where you have the one character they call Onakama because he's interested in men or whatever, and like it definitely feels like that was kind of leaning into some
Uh huh.
not good tropes regarding this, where this is just like it feels more happenstance with Eliandra. So yeah, sure, I'll take it.
Yeah. No. I. There's like. I didn't really have anything to say about it. Yeah.
Oh, I like the page where like Vash is about to go face down Knives, and you get that cool spread with him and the Knives' arc just taking up the whole page, like width of the page, basically, and then it just vanishes. It's just fucking gone because he warped into space to go fuck up the Earth forces. And they're even talking about how it should be completely impossible.
Wait. Am I ahead of you or behind you?
Maybe. Maybe. what volume are you? Or
I think I
what's
just
happening?
flipped to the
In
next
pages
volume.
you're seeing?
12.
Okay. I'm you're behind me because I'm like 4 chapters in.
Oh,
volume 12,
okay.
So,
Yeah, it's like I want to have more to say about this because I feel like it feels like I had more to say about the stuff I was rereading, which I guess that makes sense, but it's like, yeah, I just remember like really liking the Trigun anime and like the first reading, you know, jogging a lot of those memories. And then it's just like getting into this stuff and it's just like, you know, it's interesting. It's just like I'm having a hard time like elaborating on what I find interesting or why.
I mean, I go through a bunch of stuff where it's like I see things there, but it just isn't emotionally connecting with me. But I'll keep going through it. Obviously, like I think the biggest example I can think of is Sailor Moon, where I watched 200 episodes of it and I was like, it's fine. Like the most interesting stuff I got out of Sailor Moon was honestly like looking into like the author sort of creating it and what her influences were, and just thinking about how it synthesized certain things to change magic, like add to the magical girl genre in a major way. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have that with Trigun right now, where I'm just like, yeah, there's some neat things about the conflict, but just emotionally, I'm just not there. So,
yeah, because it's like part of the conflict involves like the characters who warped from Earth that I don't think we'd ever seen prior to this reading, but it feels like they had a big, like they were a big part of like the drama, and I was just like, I don't know. I was more interested in the stuff with Vash and Knives, but I think I just didn't get it.
I mean, I also don't really, like. I'm trying to think of like how Meryl's character, like what because she was also kind of doing stuff, but like I just passed by Olivia protecting her, but yeah, I definitely feel like the Earth forces are there more for almost for exposition stuff, for just getting across like Knives and what he's doing. Because they offer that perspective that the people on the planet don't have.
I did notice, in like looking back on, like I know it comes up in the thing with Legato, but also in this little scuffle with Vash and Knives that Vash mentions he and Knives being like not mattering to the future of the planet, and like they should be left in the past. And it also comes up with Legato, where like Legato notices that like Vash has a similar mentality to him, where like he doesn't see any like value in himself for the world, or in the greater picture of things, I guess. But like at the end of the manga, like Vash is still around, and the legend of Vash the Stampede still grows. So it's like, even Vash on some level was wrong.
Yeah. He was ultimately accepted, despite everything, right? Or after everything, rather. We also get Legato's backstory, which is really brutal. Him basically being a complete victim of the world, and turning that anger on it in exchange. So, trying to think if I had anything else to say about, or anything to say about the fight, specifically. Oh yeah, I guess the way it ends is really important. Because I'm in volume 13. If you have anything to say about the fights between, because I'm getting to the end of the Livio fight, and obviously the Vash versus Legato. But I'm trying to think of something to say.
Yeah, because there definitely are like some of the fights have a lot of like action happening, but not really like dialogue. So some of them do go kind of quick, at least as far as like a discussion goes.
Right.
I feel like there are definitely things I could say in a little more detail about the like Vash and Legato fight, but I don't want to like spoil the anime for you.
I mean, I wouldn't mind, because there's only so much you can spoil, because like there's 26 episodes, right? And only like a third of them I've already read. So even if you spoil like one or two, like there's still I don't know because I'm already interested in seeing it, but I don't mind.
All right, well then if you're not worried about the spoilers, basically like a lot of the execution and like the details of this fight are different, obviously, but there definitely are aspects of the Vash and Knives fight that mirror what happens in the anime. Mainly the whole thing where Legato is basically like trying to get Vash to kill him. Like if he can't kill Vash, then it's like it's a battle of ideals, and like, you know, like Legato's in a point either way where like he feels like his life has no value. Either he, you know, can defeat Vash or he just stalls him as long as he can, but like there's no value in him living. What I think is I don't know. In general for me, I think maybe it's just because the Trigun anime is shorter than like I don't know, the way that Legato is kind of sprinkled throughout Maximum, it just I don't know how to describe it. It just wasn't as effective for me personally. I mean, he's definitely there are aspects of his character that are different for sure, but like when it comes to this fight and the whole like Vash needing to make a choice, like one life over another, you know, in the anime, I remember it being more like emotionally effective for me because like the difference of like the life he's choosing to protect is like here he's it was like Raslo and Livio who were and I think like they like before Vash pulls the trigger, it also like shows a shot of like Wolfwood, so it kind of feels like maybe Vash's no, I don't know, I'll just stop.
Don't stop unless you're not sure what you're trying or where you're going with that.
Yeah, like maybe I might be misreading Vash's motivations in this fight. Like maybe it doesn't have anything to do with Wolfwood at all. Maybe it's just like he had that comment about like you're fighting so hard to save others that like, you know, you don't deserve to die, or however exactly he said it. But what I did like the parallel between Vash and Legato, because I think there might have even been a parallel drawn in the anime, but just under different circumstances. But obviously I mentioned the line of like Legato and Vash not seeing any value for themselves in the world. And like there's even that like one panel where he's like holding Vash by the collar, and then like Legato is in the next panel like chained up with like a collar on his neck, and like I don't know, they definitely have an interesting like they're I don't want to say rivals, but like I don't know, I can't think of the words I'm trying to say.
I mean, I don't know. Well, because like, you know, yeah, they did have, because he's thinking of Wolfwood, who was trying to push him to like you were saying earlier, is like, you know, trying to save the world and put it on his shoulders without looking out for himself, because he has that lack of self-value. And you know, he does cave on his ideals and kill Legato, right? Because because you know, Livio was risking his life to protect people in changing. You know, because I was talking about Wolfwood being the one who like sort of takes on Vash's ideals as a human. But I guess it ended up being Livio in that sense, because he was someone who was a killer who, you know, like Vash, who destroyed July. But he ended up like, you know, he was able to, you know, work with Raslo instead of being separated from him, and, you know, fighting alongside Vash to protect the world. And so Vash protected him. He killed Legato so Livio could continue to survive and be right, because like that panel where he says like you know, I couldn't bear to let that go to waste, and it's just like that, you know, like he fucking about like the way his eyes and expression are drawn is really good. You know, and it makes sense that he'd like think about Wolfwood, because like after that we see like you know the panel with him calling Wolfwood a coward because he's the one who's, you know, he's killing people when he doesn't want to, because but then now, because of course Vash is thinking about like the person who he butt heads with about this subject matter because like we talked before last time about his contradiction, right? Because it's like he thanked Wolfwood for killing when he wouldn't, and now he does bend and he does kill when he after spending so long trying not to. So I don't know. It was an interesting resolution to the legato because he did bend basically. Like in the anime, it's fairly similar. The circumstances are different, but it's like a different character that Vash is trying to protect in that conflict. And I don't know. It's and well, there's also the way Meryl talks about it, where it's like the people from Earth are considering just sacrificing everyone to stop knives and making
that was a really impactful
but
line.
Vash,
that like
where Vash just killing one life was
like the people who were making the orders to kill thousands or hundreds or whatever, like from a distance, it's like if they were the ones who actually had to pull the trigger to take one life, they wouldn't do it. But I thought that was a very powerful line. Yeah, and Meryl's saying like he doesn't have to bear this on his own. Because like I was also thinking about the flashback we get with Knives, where Vash was captured by a town, and like we see him chained up, and Knives killed everybody, right? And Vash obviously was not happy with that because he doesn't value himself. So these humans who that Rem valued shouldn't have to die because of me, basically. And but Vash is able to kill he's not willing to kill to protect himself, but he was willing to kill to protect someone else, and that was very much like basically because ultimately like everyone was trying to get him to kill, but like he'd literally like ruin his own like we saw how his body is, like he'd ruined that before, and he'd always try to find it because in basically every other case he was able to find a way to get out of the situation without killing someone, or in some cases like with Wolfwood having someone else pull the trigger, but this time he had to do it, and it was heavy for him, so I kind of wish that Meryl and Millie maybe like had a little bit more to do over the course of the story, but I do really like Meryl's dynamic with Vash and just the two people who kind of mutually understand the weight of taking a life. Right, I guess, like, I just thought of Meryl's line about, like, having just the amount of force you need to, right, with, just a single gun, so, and in that way, like, Vash, he only killed the one person, like, only as much as he needed to protect the life, right, I also like the way, like, with the feathers, it was interesting, with the way, because, like, the feathers have a bunch of experiences, and I thought I was about to sneeze. And they just touch people, and they get all these memories, like good and bad. And I don't know, just think about how, like, the way experiences, like shared experiences, right? Like, again, going back to the one with the father and the son, right? Which where the father was unwilling to kill the other person's son because he was calling for his dad, right? Like they're he wasn't able to cause more pain because he saw the result of that. Basically, like he saw or what, like he knew that would cause pain for another father who maybe didn't ask for a son who would do such horrible things, but so having all these experiences being passed around to all these people, like I don't know, it's interesting the way they use the line "love and peace" because obviously I feel like because it's used a couple times in the manga, but I feel like with me thinking of that as like an iconic thing of Vash's character, it comes less from the manga and more from like what I've seen, how I've seen people associate that with Vash's character from like the outside, like just seeing people reference it for me. And so I was just thinking about how it's like I don't know. I'm like, is it just used more in the anime, or maybe it comes across more strongly because of the audio and the voice associated with it, or maybe it's just used more often because I feel like
I don't remember a specific time he said it. In
Yeah,
the manga,
I know he said it in
where
like the oh, what's it called? The like pilot chapter.
Yeah, no, I'm sure he said it at least. If not then chapter 1.
I remember it. I feel like I remember it
feels...
being a bigger part of his character, but it might not be that he said it more just like, you know, with the voice acting and stuff that like it just left an impact that way.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, because like again, from the manga alone, I didn't have that impact, but I did through osmosis, basically. So I mean, it didn't hit me emotionally. And if that's because the manga didn't give me that impact, I was just like, oh yeah, that's that line that's associated with the character that I knew about before I even touched the manga. But I was just thinking about how it like kind of didn't work for me as much. But I can see how it would work for someone who like did really care about maybe both the anime or the manga, or maybe it's just there. It was there in the manga from earlier on, and I forgot. So. But yeah, the plants end up getting destroyed, but the humans actually work to save them, and not, even though they're not, beings basically, or not human beings. So, because they do get the memories, so they see that Vash is a plant, and some people would have or seen the suffering of the plants. So of course they'd have more empathy for them, and see them as something lives that need to be protected. And then we get the final fight between Knives and Bash. I almost like mixed up the consonant sounds in their names and said Nash and Vibes.
Vibes.
Did you have anything to say before we get to that final fight, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of frustrated that I feel like I don't really have anything to say. I was hoping that like by the end of the reading I would like have a stronger takeaway from Maximum, but. I don't know. It's just it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, one thing I did just notice is because like you have Knives saying that like I won't stray from my path no matter what. So ultimately, it is kind of about them compromising, because Vash was like, I'm never gonna kill. He kills and is able to save a life for it, and ultimately the people around him were able to accept that. Where Knives said like, I'm going to destroy humanity no matter what. But like what happens at the end of the manga is he protects Vash. He ultimately bends on his goal to do that. If that made sense. And I don't see. I was kind of wondering if they maybe like because I guess I don't know what happens to Knives after that, because he just seems to vanish. Like, did he die? Maybe.
Yeah, because he took Vash plants somewhere safe. And then left, but
Well, no, actually, I'm looking at it. I assume he disintegrated basically because he was in the cloak, and then we only see the cloak there. So he basically used the last of his energy to protect Vash, and even says like, "This man, he's crucial for you. Like humanity needs Vash, basically because of who he is and as a protector." So like he ultimately goes from wanting to eliminate humanity to when he's failed and when he can't do that anymore, he decides like, well, I don't want my brother to die.
Because that was like one of his main motivators all along.
Yes. I mean, and there was a moment during the fight where he's like, because I think Legato pointed out how it's like, oh, Knives wants Vash dead now. Like his plan changed. Because originally it was like, keep Vash alive because he's a plant and thus more valuable than humans, but also like to have him suffer and eventually hopefully change, for Knives, change what he wants. So yeah, looking at it again, because I think I was a little confused first reading it, but now I'm looking back and it's like, I'm pretty sure Knives he's gone. But Vash is able to, his hair is all black, so he's presumably lost his abilities as a plant, or at least most of them. Back to that daily life of violence, where a world that's a little bit better. I guess is the main takeaway. Livio's literally taking it like he's got the gut, or no, he's at the Wolfwood's grave, and with the orphans it looks like, and Vash is smiling. I do like the joke gag with Meryl and Millie, because I think they're a good example to point at, because like ultimately like you could say, oh, the world's still violent, it's still bad. But I do think like Meryl and Millie having turned in their guns and replaced them with like journalism stuff, like Millie, instead of having a giant gun, she has a big camera, and Meryl instead of having a bunch of small guns under a coat, she has a bunch of microphones. Like it's a gag, but it's also like, oh no, they've traded. The world's at a state where they can comfortably trade in their guns for something else. So even if, of course, there is still violence in the world because you can't separate that from humanity, the things have changed basically. So
yeah, I kind of pointed out the part about the
um,
ending I found most interesting through like the fights earlier where Vash, like the world kind of returning to how it used to be, but like with a twist. Now, that like that kind of ending I think is I don't want to say it's a trope, but like it's definitely, a it it like I feel like it's something that has popped up. I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's good. It's good.
well,
And
for some
like
reason,
in this case, how before it's like Vash might have a bounty on his head again, like he did before, but now it's like on some level the world values Vash and Vash values himself, as opposed to before where he's like the humanoid typhoon, and sure there are still people who want the bounty on his head, but it's like he has people who cares about him, and he's I don't know if they called him the humanoid typhoon again, that like this like that he was this like force of nature so severe that he couldn't even be like equated to a human, but now it's like he has those human connections, and I don't know. I might have already said what I was trying to say.
well, the fact that they're not. I mean, Millie and Meryl aren't gunning after him anymore. They're showing his exploits to the world. So people, which is they're showing the world what they saw, right? Like that he is this person who's a goofball, and like they're in a way they're demythicizing him, I suppose, which allows him to connect to all these other people in the world, and because he still has the. Or let me look at because how they describe it when they're talking about the show. Yeah, they're still describing him as a mysterious human disaster. So that's still there to a degree, and obviously he's got people gunning at him. So I didn't think about that and how like they're showing the world what they saw. So yeah.
Also, the site I was using for the it crashed, so I wasn't even able to like pull up the final chapter.
No. Unfortunate. But yeah, I did. Did you have any final things to say? Or...
I wanted to real quick like see if the anime also ended on kind of a return to the status quo, but like the status quo, but it's not the status quo if things are changed. I don't know. Return to normalcy, but in a new context. Yeah, no, I'm not sure.
Yes.
But like, yeah, I think this is a case where, it could be like a Bleach situation where after having read it, I might appreciate it more with time and like kind of piece together bits of context that I feel like I'm missing, or, connect the dots on certain fights or whatever that like I didn't the first time through. But yeah, I'd have to rewatch the anime to give a definitive statement on if I do think that the original anime is just my preferred version. Because that's kind of the feeling I get at the end of this, but maybe I'm just not seeing the vision.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the manga has its fans because its differences are valid, and I think it has some neat stuff, right? It just didn't click with me, because that's the thing. That's my thing is like we both like you came in. We both came into it from different perspectives, but we ultimately feel similarly, I suppose. Where it's like, yeah, that's neat, but ultimately, didn't work for me, and it didn't seem to work for you. So I wouldn't say it's just because of the lack of the because it's a. Based on, or you saw the anime first, and the anime does different things, but yeah. So yeah, my final thoughts is I definitely liked it more than just the regular Trigun, which makes sense because the original Trigun was a canceled manga. There was some interesting stuff, but I liked Vash, I guess, to go into favorite characters. I mean, Wolfwood was cool, and Meryl, like Knives and Legato were fine.
I was checking the first discussion on Maximum to see if there were any interesting comments, and there are 0 comments.
Oh God!
So no. I'm like, well, okay, nothing to take from there.
Yeah. Did you want to have it? Because obviously there's no real favorite art. I mean, I guess if favorite fights, like I still like the puppet fight. And then I think the last, the Wolfwood and Vash versus Livio and the old guy was probably also, had a lot of neat stuff going on.
Yeah, you mentioned that you preferred the Maximum portion, but like I feel like I'm not confident that I do. Like it has a lot of
okay.
I mean, and I said probably more of the stuff I preferred was in the last reading, where maybe there was still kind of like, getting the full context on like Knives and Vash and what their backstory was and Rem. And so I like a lot of the new additions that the manga does, but it's just, I think I might have just liked the structure of that initial run better, and maybe that's why I prefer the anime. I don't know. It's kind of like once it hit that cliffhanger and like, switching between magazines, it kind of feels like the story went in a different direction than maybe like how in the original run it had set up like the gung-ho guns and all the collecting the coins and stuff. And, like, that still happened over the course of Maximum, but it didn't feel as foregrounded as it was initially.
Well, it looked like the way it resolves in a fucking joke. Like, okay, it mattered to the fight, too, but I literally couldn't tell how, because, like, from what I thought is that, like, oh, it's like, they described it as, like, it's something that can actually, like, ward off Legato's wires, but it doesn't seem to actually do anything. I didn't notice it doing anything, and then Vash even just shoots it. Like, apparently destroys it.
Well, it seemed like Legato just had to expend a lot more effort to make his powers work. So it was a limiter.
Okay.
But
gotcha.
I don't know what, like, the thematic importance of that would be.
Yeah, right. Like, it just kind of ultimately feels, I don't know. I just don't understand. Yeah, I don't get what it was there for, I guess. Yeah, that's true. Because, yeah, I guess I just thought for me, the stuff that was a bit more interesting happened in Maximum. Though, so, not that Trigun was under, maybe part of it was also just the fact that, like, Trigun was obviously canceled, so, and I don't think I knew that before I read it. Because I watched the video after the fact, the Cineclinic video after the fact, so I just read it, and I was like, oh, okay, so maybe that affected it, where obviously if I read it now, I'd be more accepting of, like, oh, right, okay, it got canceled, and,
so what I'm gathering is once it stopped being a shonen manga, it wasn't as interesting to me. to really oversimplify it.
She's so shonen brained that saying manga bad. No, I'm kidding. That the idea is funny though. Like we read Vinland Saga, and after like 10 chapters, you're like, oh, it's bad. We read JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and like once it gets to Steel Ball Run, it's like, oh no, it's bad. We read Kinnikuman, and once we get to Nisei, wait, no, you actually
is Nisei a seinen manga?
So. Nisei runs in Playboy magazine, apparently, like Playboy.
Okay.
So it's which, as I understand, I don't know if it's as I understand it, it's basically it's. I mean, in all of those cases, like I think, like Vinland Saga, there is one detail that I would felt like basically in the first chapter, there's a character whose design feels like that level of exaggerated, like he's short and he has like a broad face and he has really big mouth because he's literally like more mouth words than action. That where generally throughout the rest of the entire series, the character designs are more like grounded, I'd say. Like, so that's like the one thing that's like shonen-y that I can point in Vinland Saga. But overall, they don't like. I haven't read Nisei, but like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure doesn't meaningfully change. Trigun didn't change at all. Like, because there was mentions of like sexual violence happening even in Trigun. So I mean, I guess there is more depiction of that in Maximum. So but so that's, I guess, a little bit more seinen-ish, but it's, still like, it's overall like the feel of the manga, like they don't really like, they don't, it hasn't been a major deal that I've seen yet. So but anyway, did you have any fights or characters you wanted to highlight as far as favorites? Because obviously, again, there aren't really arcs. So.
Yeah, I mean, like, I would probably say that Vash is my favorite character. Beyond that, Wolfwood is good. I really liked what the manga did with Knives. And kind of just, he had more time to be a character than in the anime. So like those three, I like Meryl. Like Millie is fun, but I don't click with her character as much as Meryl. And then yeah, I mean, I don't know, those are the ones I felt the strongest about, I guess. Okay. It's like, I think that I could appreciate the stuff with Livio and Raslo more with time. Like, I feel like even in this discussion, I kind of pieced, like, one or two things together, like, with the whole, like, the fight with Wolfwood and how Vash and Wolfwood were working together, but, like, it wasn't until the fight with, the Crimson Nail that, like, Livio and, Raslo kind of, like, came to fight as one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in terms of the fights, I feel like I didn't really just click with the action in this manga at all.
Okay. Yeah, because I will say, like, the parts I liked about the two fights that I mentioned, it was more so than just the way that it was.
Yeah, like, drawn, I think there were concepts for, like, powers I liked, but I talked about that, I think, in the first or the second discussion, that just, like, Legato's powers are cool. There was the guy with the, like, saxophone who used, like, music wave or sound waves. But, like, yeah, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But yeah, I guess that does it for Trigun. Sad that we weren't big on it, but, it was still neat. I've never, there's nothing that I feel like is a waste of
like,
time
some manga, I think, make for,
media.
like, there are definitely manga we've read where I maybe didn't enjoy the reading it quite as much, but then when we discussed it, it's like, oh, okay, I better understand what it's doing. And then there were some manga, like, I feel like this is how I'm feeling with Trigun Maximum, where it's like, I was definitely interested in reading it and seeing where the story was going, but I don't really know how to unpack it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that does it for Trigun. So yeah, as I mentioned before, next time we're reading Boruto, chapters 56 to 81, plus the two other manga and the Minato one shot. So Mathwiz, you might want to start your reading earlier, because it's I think it's actually, how many? Let me check how many Boruto volumes it is and see how bad.
Well, at least the Boruto discussion, there's no way that it won't. There's no way that it'll be a bad discussion, because we always have something to say about Boruto.
Yeah, we always, exactly. Like, I don't, even if this is like our least favorite arc, it's Boruto, and I don't think, I mean, actually, there's some arcs that in the first reading that were like,
it's like,
so,
I don't know, I feel kind of, I always feel kind of bad on these Nen Show discussions when it's like, I know that somebody out there loves this series, and I feel like I don't want to disrespect, but if it's just like some stories click with me and some don't, and that's my L.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, I've said it before, but I like how Shaves puts it, where it's like, if you go into something and you don't walk away like having having it been worth your time, then, like, he sees that as a loss for him as well, because it's like, well, that's time you could have spent going through something he did like, right? So, like, he wants to, and I feel the same, like, I want to get something out of everything I go through, so, like, and yeah, even if I ultimately didn't click with the click with Trigun, I still thought it was neat, and I got some things out of it. You know, like it was cool. It's cool manga. It's just not for me. But yeah, and also, so I looked in, so Boruto, it's 6 volumes of Boruto, and then 4 volumes of the spin-offs, and then one extra one-shot on top of that. So it'll be a longer reading than normal. So you know, maybe read a couple of the spin-offs this week before, and then so then you'll have only the 6 volumes.
Hey, and maybe doing this, I can just poke Bree to be like, hey, can we get back to watching the anime?
Always a good idea. Yeah. Yeah, because that's right. That's one difference between this time and last time we talked about Boruto is that you hadn't watched Boruto before the last time we read it, so that'll be something. I mean, obviously, this reading, there's only literally 4 or 5 episodes that were or 4 like a couple chapters that were animated. So, you know, this is gonna be the first time I get new.
Oh, so some of the manga even goes. So. I thought maybe the anime stopped at the end of the pre-time skip.
No, I think there was some production issues, and they just you know, it worked well enough, quote unquote, I think, for a stopping point. They were able to, but it's very clearly you know, this I knew the arc wasn't over, and you know, well, there's going to be a continuation to the anime eventually. So, but I assume they're, you know, waiting for the manga to build up stuff. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. But anyway, yeah. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.